In this video, we're going to be looking at the leadership style known as servant leadership. What it is, where it came from, what are the core principles of it, and is it a good leadership style? We'll even talk about some of the myths and some of the issues about it. So let's get into this and let's talk about servant leadership. So the core principle of servant leadership is very self-explanatory. You serve people. It's a focus on people, caring about them, empathy, service, taking care of those who are around you. That's the core principle of servant leadership. The term and kind of the first appearance of this was coined by a man named Robert Greenleaf in 1970, thereabouts. And you can still go and find his research, find his books. I even took a class in my college studies that was focused on servant leadership, and his book was the primary textbook that we had to use. Ultimately, the core principle, the core belief of servant leadership is the fact that if you put your people first, you focus on them, take care of them, then your organization will have long term success. It is a people first mindset to leadership as a whole. And that is kind of the core basis of servant leadership. Now, within servant leadership, there are really 10 key principles that kind of make up the overall function of servant leadership, if you will. So here are the 10 different characteristics. And I want you just to think about those for just a moment and kind of how they play into a leadership style, if you will. So, number one is listening, the effective listening, active listening, really paying attention to what people are sharing with you, having that open door policy, willing to take the good with the bad, that kind of mindset, because what people have to say is important. That's one of the key principles of servant leadership. Number two is empathy, which kind of ties in. You care about what the other person has going on. You care about what their problems are. You care about the things that matter to them. Having empathy is a key part of servant leadership. Now, number three is healing. Now, this may sound a little bit crazy. We're not talking about, you can be a servant leader and automatically fix everybody's problems, but it's the idea of finding healing. Now, that could be emotional healing. That could be if there is a physical trauma or a physical situation, you want them to receive the proper treatment. So, here's just kind of a quick example of that. If you are a servant leader and you have somebody that gets injured, you're not going to be worried about their sick leave and, can they take off or, man, they should be answering emails while they're laying in the hospital bed. They need to get healing and taken care of. Kind of similar, a servant leader, if somebody's struggling with substance abuse or is dealing with some sort of mental disorder or mental health problems, even, those are people who need healing. And a servant leader wants to prioritize and help in that setting. Now, one of the next principles of servant leadership is just awareness, being aware of the surroundings, what's going on, what's kind of the common themes going on within an organization or within a team. Are people disgruntled? Are they happy? What's the culture like? Servant leaders are going to be very aware of the things that impact their followers. That's just something they take notice of. And so they are more aware in general to their surroundings, and that plays a huge role into their leadership. The next principle of servant leadership is persuasion. Now, a lot of people see this as coercion, which is not true. If you've ever heard me talk about the John Maxwell quote that leadership is influence, a lot of people see influence as coercion, but that's not true. A servant leader is very persuasive because there is evidence about them truly, genuinely, and authentically caring about people. So if you care about people, want to see what's best for them, you are serving them, not expecting anything in return, you just want to see them become the best that they can be, then of course you're going to be very persuasive because people know if you come to them with an idea or an opinion or a recommendation, it's coming from a place of care, a place of love. And so that gives you a lot of persuasion. One of the next characterizations is conceptualization, if you will. Servant leaders are able to really see a big picture, but they also are very visionary. And this is going to be very similar to the next one. So I'm just going to group them together. The next one is foresight. And so when you have foresight or this conceptualization, they're able to see the big picture. They're able to see off in the distance. But then what does that look like to put that into practice now? It's that idea. There's a lot of organizations that have big goals, big dreams, and it's, hey, we want to achieve this way off in the future, but they don't start today. And there's a lot of people in leadership. It's the same thing. I want to be this great leader, start this company, do this great thing, but they don't start today. A servant leader has those two things where they can see into the vision of the future, but they also care about the concept and starting it today. What are the tangible steps that can be done? And it's, again, all focused on people. How can we help our people become the best that they can be so that they can live and serve our organization to help it become the best it can be? So that's part of it as well. So, another key characteristic or kind of a key tenet within servant leadership is the idea of stewardship. So this is actually something I practice in my leadership and my business is, the resources of a business is not meant to be managed or controlled. They are meant to be stewarded. Now, we could argue that's a little bit of a play on words or something like that, but it's the thing of I am responsible for the good, ethical, moral treatment of these goods, resources, finances, these people. I want to take care of everything that is within my stewardship so that it is good, effective, and benefits the most people rather than maybe the mindset of somebody who is looking at it as, we've got these resources. How do we put it into production to make the most money? What's the fewest number of people we need to make the most amount of product to make the most revenue? A servant leader is going to be looking at, I want to steward it well, whatever it takes, even if it's a slight loss in profit, so that people are served and benefited. That's a big difference there. Now, you've heard me talk about it a lot already through these principles, so I'm going to call it out as just one specific. Servant leaders are committed to the growth of people. Now, it is something where they want to invest in people. They want to see leadership development, personal growth development, professional development. But even, let's take this even a step further. A servant leader is going to care about if you're having family trouble or you have some marital issues or some relationship struggles. They are going to care about what you have going on, not to the extent they want to get all in your business, ask all the details, and go gossip about it. It's they want to see you happy, whole, and taken care of. And so that might be where you are struggling in your marriage and they might recommend a EAP provider or something within the organization to go and get marriage counseling. It's something they want to talk to you and know as much as you're willing to share, just because they want to see, again, the healing and you taken care of, but they also are committed to that growth aspect. They want to see you go from employee to senior to leader and really advance your career to be successful for yourself and your family. It's a big aspect that they care about. And that's one big important thing. Now, the last one that I'm going to share with you as a key principle of servant leadership is building community. Now, we all know that there are some organizations, and you can see I kind of shake my head and I kind of sigh that they use the whole we're family here. And I understand the sentiment. I don't like the phrase personally. I understand the sentiment or the goal, but there should be more of a sense of community where if you come to work and you like the people you work with, you like the leaders that you work for, you like the organization, you believe in the vision, you have a sense of belonging and a sense of purpose within that company. It's not so much just clocking in, clocking out, doing a job that's repetitive, whatever it is. You come in and you're excited to see the fruits of your labor. There's a sense of community and you can talk to the people around you. How was your weekend? How was your day? And it doesn't feel awkward or weird. It's just fine. It's normal. And so there's an aspect where there is a good benefit in community, but I think we need to start focusing on the word community a lot more than focusing on the word family because I see those as two very different things. I'm not married to my work. I'm married to a spouse. I have a family. My work is not my family. So again, let's look at community rather than family. So let's quickly cover a couple big myths that are around servant leadership. The first one's obviously, and what I'm talking about, the care, compassion, taking care of people. One of the big myths is that this leadership style is weak. It's very passive. If you're all the time trying to just take care of people, what if you have somebody that's really taking advantage and really hurting the company and you just want to keep forgiving them and giving them opportunity and letting things slide, but that's not the case. Even in servant leadership, there comes a time where there's going to be hard decisions that have to be made. Because again, think about it from this perspective. A servant leader wants what is best for the organization, but especially for the people. Now, if one person on a team is continually slacking off, they're continually not doing their job, they're taking advantage of the organization, all of those aspects, yes, the servant leader might take time and try to see if they can resolve the issue and improve what they can for that person. But when the time comes, if that person is a detriment to the success and well being of other people in the organization and the growth of the people, then they're probably going to let that person go. It's not a passive or just a non-strict leadership style. There are still hard decisions that have to be made, but it is a slightly more forgiving leadership style where if there is a chance to help somebody or help them improve in some way, a servant leader wants to take that route rather than just cutting ties and kicking people out to the curb. Now, the next myth has to do with accountability, similar to the last one, but there's a belief that servant leaders cannot hold people accountable. They're too forgiving, they're too nice, they're pushovers, and they're not going to have the difficult conversations with people. But in what I just shared, I hope that you see that very real that there are difficult conversations. I think even in my past in corporate job, I had a leader who I would consider a servant leader. This individual really cared about people, wanted to see them taken care of. They cared about things that mattered to them in their personal life, their goals or achievements, everything they were doing. This individual cared about all of that. But I remember when there were people who were not meeting the goals and expectations of the team, and it was causing stress and extra work on the rest of the team members for the sake of the betterment of the team, the organization, and the well being of everybody else. I had to have difficult conversations where those people were put on performance management. And if they didn't meet expectations or they didn't meet goals that were set for them, they would be terminated and they were no longer with the company. There was still accountability in that servant leadership aspect. So don't just think that if you have a servant leader, you embrace servant leadership as a mindset, that it's just a pushover and they're not going to be strict whatsoever. There are still aspects that matter. So in reality, with those couple myths, those are probably the couple most common. Servant leadership is a very strong leadership style. Now, I've talked to people, they don't like it at all. Perfectly fine. You're entitled to your opinion. You can absolutely have that. For me, I do see it as a valuable model, but maybe not so much on its own. Now, that's a debate for maybe another video. But for this, just focusing on servant leadership, if somebody wants to become a servant leader, I think it can be very successful. And in a short moment, I'm going to share with you some live examples of people who were servant leaders and were very successful in what they did. So here's a few examples of servant leaders who were very successful. Number one, Howard Schultz from Starbucks. Very much a servant leader. Starbucks is one of the largest franchised brands in the world. I mean, obviously, there's large companies like McDonald's or Subway and others, but Starbucks is relatively a household name throughout the entire world. And one of their primary leaders was a servant leader and cared about people. Howard Schultz was, by and large, a servant leader. So, somebody, if you go look at their life, their leadership, and things that they did, they led a very successful, rapidly growing organization as a servant leader. Another great example of a large organization leading very well is, I believe, the name Herb Keller from Southwest Airlines. Go read about Southwest Airlines. Their principles, the things they care about people, the way they care and take care of their employees, things that they've done in the past, and how this individual led as a servant leader. It's another great example of how this can be very successful. Now, let's go to a political example. Most of us are probably familiar with Nelson Mandela, very focused on people, serving people, wanting to see best for people. Now, I want to give you one more as a religious example, and this is probably one that is absolutely huge. There's been tons of books. I've got a few on the bookshelf behind me, and that's Jesus himself, where Jesus led as a servant leader. John Maxwell recently wrote the book, Jesus, the High Road Leader. There's Lead Like Jesus. There's Jesus, the Servant Leader, I believe is the title of the book. I've got probably 4 or 5 of them in my library and collection between my different offices. And that is a key example of a servant leader. It was somebody who cared about people, wanting to see the best in people to provide them an opportunity to be successful, even though life was going to be hard? How can we take a difficult situation, a hard life, and all of the things going on and help people become successful? That is the mindset of a servant leader. So, why in those examples does servant leadership work? Especially, look at the organization, Southwest Airlines, Starbucks, other organizations. How does a servant leader really make an impact and have that large of an organization? Well, number one, it builds trust. When people see that you have their best interest in mind, they're going to trust you. They're going to give you that support and they're going to believe in the mission because you believe in them. Another big aspect is it empowers employees because, again, you want to see them grow. You want to see them develop. You want to see them become the best employees, the best people, the best professionals that they can be. You invest into other people, they buy in, but you are empowering them to succeed. Now, this is something that's very interesting too, is servant leadership will actually reduce turnover and actually make organizations tend to be more successful or keep employees longer. And the reason for that is, especially among millennials and Gen Z, there's a lot of research where training and development and career opportunities are all the things they're looking for. And if you look at why people leave jobs and jump from job to job, they're looking for pay raise, career opportunity, better titles, better positions, leadership responsibility. They're looking for all of those things. Well, if you offer that in your organization, you empower and grow your people, you give them training, development, and want to see them become the best that they can be, why would they leave? If you treat them well, treat them with respect, and take care of them, then your people are likely going to stay. And that is a big, big aspect of servant leadership. So, if you want to get started using servant leadership or maybe applying some of these principles, I'm going to give you some quick steps. How can you walk through and actually get started on a servant leadership related journey? Number one, just become more self aware about your leadership. Become more self aware about what your team has going on. And this is determining your leadership style. Maybe it's working with a leadership coach or getting leadership training, trying to identify how do people view you and relate to you. And if you need help with that, by all means, reach out to me. I'm a leadership coach. I'll gladly work with you and help you on that. But start to really dive into how do I lead other people? And then when you interact with your team or your coworkers and the people that are around you, ask them what they have going on. What's some frustrations you have about the job? Do you have any ideas on how to improve them? What's something you feel like we could do better? How can I help you? How can I support you? What are things that we can do as a team to get better? Start to look at that, giving them opportunity to share. That empowers them. It gives them an opportunity to speak up, and it shows you listen and you care about their opinions. Another key aspect you can do to start practicing servant leadership, give credit where credit is due. If somebody does a good job, recognize them for it. Tell them thank you. Give them the opportunity to know they've done well. A very simple thing. I did a blog post and other things about it, writing thank you notes. It could be so simple, but if you have a team member that's done a great job and has really done something great, send them a quick email as a thank you. But more importantly, use handwritten notes because that is so much more impactful. I will even go as far as say, grab a sticky note and handwrite a short little note and just write your name at the bottom and leave it on their desk. It could be so simple, but it's going to have a huge impact because it gives recognition and credit to your employees to let them know that they matter and you care about them. The next thing is I want you to give space for people to grow. Often we don't allow people to try things and fail because we want perfection. We want people to do things right 100% of the time. We expect perfection, but one of the ways we learn and grow most is by failure. Give people the opportunity to stretch their limits, stretch what they think they can do, really push themselves. And if they fall short, tell them it's okay. Come alongside, help them finish or help them figure it out, and then move on from there. Give them an opportunity to try, fail, try again, and succeed. That is a model that makes a big, big difference. Another thing is I want you to model the behavior that you expect from them. I tell this to a lot of leaders, a lot of managers. If you work 80 hours a week, your employees are going to see that and they're going to think that you expect that. If they see you say family matters, work life balance matters, and you proceed to miss all of your children's activities and you don't have date nights with your wife and you miss all of those opportunities that is family and things that should matter, what do your employees think? The things that you model, the things that you live directly reflect your leadership style on other people. So if you really want to be successful, consider that. And then build that community, build that trust, build that rapport. That will look different in different organizations, but try to build that connection, try to build that community, build that trust, and start opening up communication where people can just talk, they can share, they feel comfortable coming into work. Those are things that will help you become more like a servant leader. I want to quickly give you some challenges to servant leadership too, because it's not all sunshine and rainbows. There are challenges. One of the biggest problems that servant leaders face is struggling with boundaries and being a people pleaser. Now, I talked about work life balance just a little bit. Imagine a servant leader where people are constantly coming up to them asking for help. And they say, yes, I'll help you. Yes, I'll help you. Yes, I'll help you. And next thing they had work life balance, but now they're working 70, 80 hours a week and their work life balance is out the window because they're trying to serve people. There is a need for boundaries. There is a need for you to have restrictions in some areas where you serve people as best you can, but not at the compromise of losing your own sanity and becoming a people pleaser. Lack of boundaries and being a people pleaser will damage your leadership. So be very careful in that. One of the others, and this is probably the number one reason people don't like servant leadership, but it's simply serving people versus results. Because there's a mindset in corporate America that a business lives and exists with the sole purpose of making revenue and profit for their shareholders. That's kind of problematic for servant leadership because your sole focus or your primary focus is going to be on serving and taking care of people, not always profit for shareholders. And so, what you will see in a lot of companies, you may actually run into servant leadership not being accepted or adopted because there's more of a focus on revenue and profits rather than people development and people success. And so that is a challenge of servant leadership. It's finding an organization or a group where being a servant leader isn't frowned upon. It's championed and supported. But that can be a big challenge for servant leaders is when there's contradicting priorities. Then one of the last ones that I'll share with you is there are people who, if they see you being forgiving and serving and growth opportunities, they may try to take advantage and they may try to exploit that. It's just real and honest. There are some people like that in the world. And so servant leaders have to be very careful that they give people opportunities. They want to see what's best in them. But if they start to take advantage, it's time to put a stop to it. You know, sometimes the best service you can do for some people like that is a hard service and cutting them off and letting them know there are consequences to their sadly that's a thing that can be done in love is giving consequences to actions because the person's either going to improve or they're going to live in with their consequences. But somebody who's taking advantage, slacking off, harming the company, harming the team is not helping or serving the rest of your team members. And so it's better to cut that off and focus on your other team members and investing into them than having that extra person who is just causing more harm and drama and dragging everybody else down. Focus on the people who actually are trying to grow and develop, and that will make a big difference. So, two final thoughts about servant leadership. One of the big things is legacy, building something that lasts and building a connection with people that last. One of the other key aspects is just serving people so that they can be successful. And it's the belief that people who are successful make organizations that are successful. So, what are your thoughts on servant leadership? Let me know in the comments. But let me know if you want to start working on servant leadership. What is one action in the next week that you can start working on improving your servant leadership? Put it in the comments. Let me know. I will respond to you if you leave it in the comments. And I would love to see your responses. What is one area you can start being a better servant leader this week?